Hello, welcome back. Thank you so much for being here. Today we're going to be ranking all of the face palettes that I tried in 2024. So we do have 13 palettes to get into, but before we do, I want to say a huge thank you to Luisa for working with me on today's video. I am so excited to work with them as always. I've been working with them for the past couple of years and I always love when I get to do so because I wear their pieces constantly. So if you're not familiar, Luisa is a carbon neutral sustainable jewelry brand based in New York City, and all of their pieces start at $35, and they are also backed by a 2-year warranty, which I love so much. But if you are familiar with my channel, you know that day to day I am pretty much always wearing some form of a similar dainty piece. I don't go too crazy with my jewelry. Every now and then I'll throw in some statement pieces, but for the most part, I just love dainty and delicate pieces that are perfect for every single day and that kind of just go with everything. I do prefer a much more simple chain type of necklace. I have their Inna necklace that I wear all of the time. I love it so much that I have it in both gold and silver. Today, I'm actually wearing the Hayden, which is also one of my favorites because this is basically just a larger chain, and I think the way the links are designed is what makes it so much more interesting. But it's just a really beautiful, simple piece that looks great with loungewear, but also looks very dressed up, and it just makes everything look a little bit more elevated. This is also really great for layering if you like that. And the most recent piece I got is their Laney earrings. So these are actually brand new to their site, and I have not stopped wearing these since I got them. I'm sure you've seen them in several of my previous videos, but these just have this green stone right up here, and then they have this cute little gold heart. The second I saw these on their new arrivals section of their website, I knew I had to have them, and they have definitely become a favorite. And they do look like they might be a little bit more heavy, but they're really not. I don't feel them at all. I've also slept in them and they do not bother me. So I absolutely love these. So like I mentioned, their pieces start at $35, and right now they have their holiday sale on where you can get up to 30% off. So if you're looking to order some gifts for yourself or to gift to others, now is the perfect time because the more pieces you purchase, the better the discount. I actually gifted a pair of Ana Luisa earrings last year and I was so excited about it, and my friend absolutely loved them. So I do think they make an amazing gift as well if you're looking for some last minute shopping ideas. But I want to say another huge thank you to Ana Luisa for working with me on today's video. Let's get into this ranking. So in 2024, I tried 13 face palettes. I genuinely do not know how that happened, but we're just going to get right into it. Coming in at number 13 is from MAC, and this is their Teddy Takeover Eye and Face palette in the light variation. So this collection was released in such a strange manner. I think it was released mostly in Asia, but back in March, I was in store at a MAC and I saw this collection and I was so excited. I don't think it ever came to the US, and I don't think it was ever available online in Canada, but I did find it in store. So of course I did purchase this palette. This, I believe, was 70 Canadian dollars. And as a little side story, when I purchased this, it was my birthday, and my goal for my birthday was just to go shopping. And so I wasn't paying attention, and man, if I had been paying attention, I would have spent $70 on this. But as it was, I did. So this comes with 4 eyeshadows, and then we also have underneath a highlight, which I just kind of thought was a strange combination. I feel like that would have been a much more valuable addition if it was maybe a blush or something like that. I also preferred this shade as more of an eyeshadow, and this one worked better as a highlight. I suppose you could use this as a blush as well if that's what you wanted to do. So I like the eyeshadow shades just fine. I think they're pretty. I do think the look ends up coming out a little bit more fall inspired, and I purchased this in March, so I don't think I was loving it as much as I normally would. The highlighter is pretty, but I do like it better as an eyeshadow, just the way the shade is. It doesn't work the best for me as a highlight. It's a little deep. This eyeshadow here works better as a highlight. The formula of the eyeshadows is perfectly fine. I quite like it, but just kind of how this palette is put together, it throws me off a little bit. Again, 4 eyeshadows and a highlight doesn't make the most sense to me, so I definitely wasn't inclined to reach for this as much as I thought I might. And also $70 for this is just bananas, because I don't think there's anything about this that justifies that price point. Coming in at number 12 is from Tarte, and this is their Maracuja Juicy Eye and Cheek palette. This is one that I almost didn't pick up, and I kind of wish I didn't. It's not a terrible palette, but it's definitely not a favorite. It's definitely something I could have skipped. So this has 12 eyeshadows. It's not their Amazonian Clay eyeshadow formula. Their Amazonian Clay formula is beautiful. This formula is just okay. And then on the bottom, we have 2 of their Maracuja Juicy cream blushes and a cream bronzer. I actually liked these more than I liked the eyeshadows, which I did not expect. When I first got this, I was a little worried because it didn't look in the photos like these cream products had a cover. They do, and I do think it is separated really well. And I really do like these cream products more than the eyeshadows. The eyeshadows are just okay. So for that reason, I didn't reach for this as much. Going into the winter like we are right now, I do tend to reach for more cream products because my skin is very dry. So it really appreciates more cream and liquid products going into the winter months. However, the eyeshadows are just okay, so I'm not overly inclined to reach for this over anything else. Coming in at number 11 is from Nars, and this is their Laguna Ultimate Face Palette in shade 1. So shade 1 is for the more light to medium skin tones, and shade 2 is for the deeper skin tones. I was really excited to see them release more than one palette for the different skin tones because historically Nars hasn't always done that, so I was very excited to see that. So in these palettes, we got 2 bronzers, a highlight, and 4 eyeshadows. So the eyeshadow shades are very much in line with every other palette Nars has. We have some golds, we have some pinks, and it's just a warm toned group of 4. And then we have 2 bronzers and a highlight. So the highlight is a little bit deep for me, but I can make it work. And then the bronzer shades, we have Laguna 2 and Laguna 4. So my perfect shade is actually Laguna 1. So I just stick with Laguna 2. 4 is definitely too deep for me, but I can use it to work with these eyeshadows up here. My main critique with this is having 2 bronzers. I just wasn't really sure how I felt about that. It just seemed really unnecessary because for me, that is one that is definitely not going to get used much. I do think a better launch would have perhaps been, rather than 2 palettes, maybe 3 palettes, and then each one having a blush rather than 2 bronzers. Because then you really have a full face palette. You get blush, bronzer, highlight, all more geared toward specific skin tones, and then you have the eyeshadows, and it really would have been a full face palette. It would have been perfect, but because we got 2 bronzers, it's just not complete to me. But I just don't know that this was the best value. I think it would have held a lot more ground in my collection if it also had a blush in it. Coming in at number 10 is from Natasha Denona, and this is the Berry Pop Cheek Trio. So this is actually a lovely trio, and this is one that I think I'm ranking lower solely based on the color. I do really like these shades. I think this is a beautiful palette. So we do have a cream blush here, then we have the Tinted Glow cream base, and then we have the highlighter. I think these are beautiful. On me and my very fair skin, this blush gets too heavy very, very quickly. So I do want to be careful with that. If I do go in with a lighter hand, I do think it looks super, super beautiful. One thing I didn't fully understand when I first purchased this palette is that this glow cream base is actually meant to be more of a base for this. And I don't think I understood that initially, but I do think this is a really lovely trio. This kind of made me almost buy the My Dream trio. I haven't ruled that out yet altogether, but this almost made me buy that because I like the formula in here so much. I haven't always loved Natasha's cream blush formula. I just find that they do dry up a little bit quicker than some other cream blushes. I know cream blushes in general don't have the longest shelf life, but I feel like her formula does dry up a little bit quicker than some, and I feel like this one is holding its own much longer. So that makes me really happy right away, and I do still really like this. I think this is a lovely palette, especially when I want to go for a more red lip and I want a little bit more on the cheeks. if I'm going for that sort of cold girl aesthetic. But I just think it's a really, really beautiful blush shade on me in the winter months. So I definitely will reach for it. It's just one that I have to be a little bit more careful about just because I'm so fair. Coming in at number 9 is a palette that I wasn't 100% sure if I should put it in eyeshadow palettes or face palettes, but I've had it stored with my face palettes, so I think that's the way to go. And this is the Danessa Myricks Groundwork Blooming Romance palette. So she came out with the Groundwork Defining Neutrals palette last year, and I love that palette. I still reach for it all the time. It actually sits right beside me on my desk because I have so many different uses for that palette. But she did come out with this one earlier this year as well, and so this one is definitely leaning much more into those pinks and mauves. So this is still described as being a full face palette, but I think the Defining Neutrals does a bit of a better job at that. So we get 10 different shades. For each shade you get this square pan of a pomade, and then you get this teeny tiny little powder. I said the same thing about the Defining Neutrals palette. I think I would have really appreciated if there was maybe an equal sized powder pan, or if the powder was larger than the pomade. I just find that I like the powders more, so I wish the pans were a little bit larger. I did figure out this year that the best way to get the most amount of pigment out of this palette is to go in with the pomade and put the powder on top. If you're creating an eye look, or even putting this on your cheeks, the absolute best way is to go in with that pomade and then the powder on top, and that really gives you the most amount of pigment. If you just use the pomades, they do have a tendency to, if you're putting them on your eyes, they have a tendency to blend away, and the powders appear a little bit more sheer on their own as well. But when you pair them, you definitely get the max amount of pigment and wear time. So that is just a tip. If you have this palette, that's the best way to work with this. So I definitely use this mostly for eyes and blush. I did try putting these on my lips as well, but the pomades are just a little bit too dry for my lips, but they do make really, really beautiful blushes. So I do really enjoy this palette. I just like the Groundwork palette a little bit more for a full face palette, because for me this ends up being more of an eye palette. But I do still really, really love this formula. I hate the fragrance though. One thing I will say that I really appreciated about the packaging. So I do think the packaging on these is so, so nice. But the Defining Neutrals palette, if you were to pick it up quickly and just grab the lid and not have a very firm grasp on the bottom of it as well, it would sort of pop open because the magnet wasn't really strong, but she did fix that with this, so I did really appreciate that as well. Coming in at number 8 is a palette I really, really like, and this is from Makeup Forever. This is their HD Skin Blush and Glow palette. This was, I believe, their holiday release, and I actually love this so much. The Makeup Forever face palettes like this are such excellent quality. So this one comes with 6 blushes over here, and then we have 6 highlights over here. We have 3 matte blushes, we have 3 more glowy blushes, but you can mix and match them as you wish to make different colors, to make different finishes. You can easily mix these with the glowier products to get a much more glowy blush, and of course you can mix the colors to create whatever color it is you want. The possibilities with this palette are endless. If you don't have a large blush collection and you just kind of want one palette to come in and sort of fill all the gaps, this will do it, because you do get a more red blush, and you get a more berry, and you get these pinks, and you even get an orange in here, and you get a coral, and then you do have these glowier ones over here as well. So this palette really fills all the gaps, and because you can mix and match, it really will give you whatever color your heart could imagine. I also love the quality of the highlighters in here. I think they're stunning as well. This is just an overall truly fantastic palette. It's such good quality. These also wear a really long time, and going into the winter months is when I like to dig out my cream products. So I definitely foresee myself using this a lot more going into the winter because they're so comfortable. They do feel much more oil-based when you swatch them out, but on the cheeks, they last so, so long. You can, of course, set them with the powder as well to make them wear even longer, but these do wear all day on their own. They look so beautiful. They go on sheer, but you can absolutely build them up. So these are going to cover such a range of skin tones. My fair skin can also make all of these shades work, and some of these are pretty deep, but they can work on my skin. I just think this palette is absolutely so phenomenal. I do have full dedicated reviews of a lot of these palettes, but this palette in particular is just so phenomenal. Coming in at number 7 is a very pricey face palette I purchased this year. I don't know if I've actually talked about it too much here on my channel because I didn't order it when it first came out and I was just sort of playing with it on my own. But this is the Chanel Le Beige Healthy Glow Sun Kissed Powder in light coral. So this year was definitely the year that I started exploring luxury makeup a lot more. When I saw this, I was so intrigued by it. So I stared at this for months before I finally purchased this, and I think it's so beautiful. So they did come out with, I believe, 5 shade variations, and this is the lightest one, so I figured it would work the best. You get a highlight, you get a bronzer, and you get a blush, and I think these are so pretty. This does have a fragrance to it, but it's not overwhelming and overpowering, and I do think these powders are a little bit more on the sheer side, so they're not going to be so intensely pigmented right away. You can build them up, but they are definitely more on the sheer side. It's a very, very easy palette to work with. I was worried that the way these powders are designed, it would be difficult to get my brush into just one product, but it doesn't. It's actually very, very easy to work with because this is actually quite a giant compact. So I do really, really enjoy this. I would say the one thing I don't love is I find the bronzer to be a little bit more warm than I like, and I don't love an overly warm bronzer, but otherwise, I think this palette is so beautiful. I am curious to try more makeup from Chanel, but we'll see what 2025 brings, but this was definitely the year that I started getting into more luxury makeup. I also love the packaging on this. I love the palette itself, so I was really, really happy with my first Chanel purchase this year. Coming at number 6 is from Flores. So this is their Eastern Beasts Sculpting Makeup Palette, and this is in shade 1. So this is from their Ode to Embroidery collection, so I love the packaging on this. I did do a sponsored video with them a few weeks ago, and this was probably one of my favorite products from that video. So you do get a contour here, you get a brightening powder, you get a blush, and you get a highlight. I love these. So the detailing on the powders is stunning. This contour here is definitely more of a contour for me. I'm not going to go in and bronze my whole face with it, but it's definitely a beautiful contour. And it is quite pigmented. I was not expecting the level of pigment I got from these, but these are also such a silky and blendable formula. Again, I was very, very surprised with how much I enjoyed this product. I also really like the highlighter because it's very pretty. It definitely gives a really beautiful glow, but it's not too much, it's not too intense, and it's not glittery, which I also appreciate. This blush up here is more of like a soft peachier blush, and it's beautiful for every day. And this brightening powder is also so beautiful. It leans a little bit yellow in the pan, so I wasn't sure if I was going to like it, but I actually really, really did. So I was so pleasantly surprised by this palette from Flores. It's easily one of my absolute favorite products I tried in that entire video. Coming in at number 5 is a palette that had the world's weirdest release, but actually does compare a little bit to the Flores' palette I just mentioned. And this is from Hourglass. This is their Ambient Lighting Palette Dream Edit. So I think this may have been mistakenly released on the US website. It never came to the Canadian website. I think this was a release for Asia. This palette was available for maybe 24 hours on the US website, and I did manage to snag it. I think it's a beautiful, beautiful palette. So we have the shades Dreamlight, Cosmic Strobe Light, Serene Flush, and Lunar Bronze. So Lunar Bronze was in the Jellyfish palette from last year, and this bronzer is a bit too orange. Otherwise, all of these shades are new, sort of. Dreamlight, which is in the Dragon palette from this year and was described as being a pre-existing shade, was described as being pre-existing because it was in here. So essentially all of the shades in the Dragon palette, especially if you're in the US, are brand new. However, I love Dreamlight because it's the perfect brightening shade. It is not too peach, it's not too yellow, it's just the absolute perfect shade. This blush is so beautiful. It definitely does lean a little bit peach, but it's gorgeous. Cosmic Strobe Light is a little bit deep for me. It will give me a bit of a cast, but it is a really, really nice highlight and I can definitely make it work. So all of these shades are super beautiful. The Hourglass powders really are incomparable. They're just so amazing. I love the way they look on the skin. They're so lightweight. They do go on a little bit more sheer, but they can be built up really beautifully and there really is nothing like them. I did do a swatch comparison of this beside the Flores, and there definitely is some similarities. I would say the brightening powder is pretty similar, the blush shade pretty similar. The highlighters are a little bit different and the bronzers are definitely different. This one's very warm. That one is very cool tone contour. But otherwise they do compare quite well. And if you are a skin tone match to me, the Flores might actually work better for you just because that bronzer is so warm if you don't like an overly warm bronzer. But I can't deny how much I do love the quality of the Hourglass powders. So I love this. The release was so strange. I don't understand, but it is a beautiful, beautiful palette. Coming in at number 4 is from Nars, and this is their holiday palette. This is their Pure Luxury Light Reflecting Cheek and Eye palette in shade 1. So once again, Nars did release 2 different palettes. We had a deeper one and a lighter one. So I went with the lighter variant, and unlike the Laguna palette, they absolutely nailed it with this one. So in this palette, you get a bronzer, a highlight, and 3 blushes. These are fantastic. So this is more of a sheer palette. These are definitely more sheer powders, but they can be built up. The bronzer is a gorgeous, gorgeous shade. It's called Blonde Crazy, but I would compare it to Laguna 1 or maybe kind of in the middle of Laguna 1 and 2. It's such a beautiful shade. The highlighter Bombshell, it looks like it's going to be so intensely glittery, but it's not. It's just a really, really beautiful highlight and it does not get too intense. These blushes down here are fantastic. This one is a very glowy blush. These 2 are gorgeous, gorgeous everyday shades. I have used these 2 shades so often. They're just absolutely perfect. These are the Baked Gelée formula, which is the best formula they come out with when it comes to their face palettes, and I do love the packaging as well. I think Nars really killed it with their face palettes this year. This is definitely one of my favorites. Coming in at number 3 is from Makeup Forever, and this was released more toward the beginning of the year. This is their HD Skin Face Essentials palette. So much like the Nars, I love this because it really is a full face palette. Except with this one, you can also get done your foundation and concealer because these shades over here are their actual foundation shades. And then over here, we have some blushes and highlights. So the foundation shades are really nice. I got rid of the box, so I don't remember what shades they are, but you can easily mix and match and customize to get your perfect shade. They do have 2 variations of this one as well. So if you want the deeper one, you can definitely grab that instead. So you can mix and match to get your perfect shade. I like to mix these 2 for my foundation, and then I go in with this one alone for concealer, and then I can go into these shades down here for a bronze. And because they are the same as the foundation formula, they also just blend so beautifully and melt together with the foundation, and it looks so effortless and beautiful. The blushes are also very beautiful, and then of course you get the highlights, and like the blush and highlight palette, you can of course mix and match these shades to sort of customize the exact shade you're looking for. I love this palette because it really does let you get it done so fast because everything you need is right here. All you need is really a powder to set everything down, but this is such a fantastic palette. It's just so quick. Coming in at number 2 is a palette that was launched all the way at the beginning of the year, and this is from Natasha Denona, and this is the Hyper Natural Face Palette. I sincerely hope she comes out with more of these. So this is what the packaging looks like. I do love the packaging. If you do flip it over, you do get those standard holes so you can pop the shades out. And in this palette, you get a bronzer contour, so you get 3 different bronzer shades. You get a blush duo, so 2 different shades, or you can mix them together. and then you get 5 eyeshadows. And these eyeshadows are all shimmery and they are designed to be worn as a one and done. You can of course mix and match. You can use these face products to enhance the look if you want to, but these are meant to be very quick one and done shades. This palette also lived on my desk for a large portion of the year because I think it's such a staple. It's just so perfect. It has every shade I could ever want. I get all my bronzer shades. I get the blushes. These eyeshadows are all stunning. They are her typical beautiful shimmer formula. She does have my favorite eyeshadow formula, so it's nice for me to be able to just grab this and get everything done. When it comes to the blush, I tend to mix these two shades. That's just how I like them paired together, but overall I think this palette is so beautiful. This is another one that I think is such a gorgeous staple for day to day. If you're looking to just get quick makeup, I think this is so beautiful, and this is probably one of my favorite face palettes that she's done. I love the packaging. I love the design behind it. I think it's fantastic, and I do like it more than her original Glam face palette or even the Love face palette that she came out with. I just like it more, and I like that she used powders in here as opposed to creams because, again, I just don't love her cream blush formula as much. I just find that it has a very short shelf life, and for a brand like Natasha Denona, I want my products to last a really long time because they're not cheap. And coming in at number 1, this is probably no surprise, but this is from Hourglass, and this is the Dragon palette. I always love the Hourglass palettes, but this is probably my favorite. They did release 3 of these this year, and I genuinely didn't know if the Jellyfish palette from last year could be beat. I just really love that palette. I still refer back to it all the time. It stays in my drawer so that I have easy access to it. It's just such a great palette. I absolutely love the highlighter in the Jellyfish palette especially. And I also love that these were all new shades this year. So we get the 2 finishing powders, which I think both are beautiful. One is Dreamlight and the other is Divine Light, and they're both absolutely gorgeous. The blushes, you do get this more coral shade, and then we get this more mauve shade down here. Compared to the Jellyfish palette, they're kind of similar shades, but I think these ones in the Dragon palette are a little bit softer. And for that reason, I actually like these a little bit more just because I do have a very fair skin tone. So day to day, I want something that is a little bit more soft. The highlighter, I don't love that it's an overly gold highlighter, and I do think that it can lean a little bit deeper on me, which I don't love, but I definitely can make it work. And my favorite thing about this palette is the bronzer, because this is actually a little bit more of a neutral, almost cooling bronzer, which normally they put that very orange lunar bronze highlight in here, which is just far too warm for me and looks very orange on my skin. So I love to see this more cool toned bronzer in here, and I've used quite a bit of this one. So this was definitely my favorite face palette of the year, but this was a year where there was a lot of fantastic face palettes, and I really like how this year played out when it came to the face palettes. So I'm really happy with everything. We definitely had some flops, but not that many. This was a really great year for face palettes, and I will always be a sucker for them. So let me know down below, what was your favorite face palette of the year? Did you try any face palettes? Are you a fan of them at all? Or do you just prefer your individual products? Let me know all of your thoughts down below. I love hearing from you guys so much. If you're new here, I hope you'll consider subscribing before you go. I do upload new videos every single week. Thank you again so very much for watching, and I will see you in my next one. Bye!